Hi, here we are with episode 24. I was just telling you in the last episode about some of the music that we enjoyed and things like that, and just starting to get into the race week after our few days sort of holiday and basically just lounging around doing nothing. But yeah, we got into the race week and we were rebuilding the cars and everything, just taking our time, and then but just enjoying the Adelaide nightlife, because every night was a party night. It just didn't matter where you went. There was, you know, you could have stayed there for 12 months and not gone to everything that was available to see. It was just fabulous. But yeah, you know, you'd be working away in the pit lane, and the Aussie Grand Prix, because again it was the end of the season. It was just an end of season party, and just everybody seemed to turn up for it. I remember I was setting up. I was polishing some bodywork in the pit lane, and we set out the engine covers on some stands and that, and I was aware of this guy, you know, constantly, you know, being photographed, and there was always lots of photographers around. But I was just aware of this guy taking photos of me from all kinds of angles, and I thought, well, all I'm doing is polishing bodywork. But I looked up and I saw a pair of Liverpool shorts, and I saw the guy had got a great big scar down his leg and that. Anyway, I looked up and I recognised him instantly, and it was the Liverpool footballer Craig Johnston, who was an Australian. And it was we got talking, and I said, oh, you know, what are you doing over here? All the usual silly questions that you would ask somebody. And he was recovering from a big, I can't remember the injury now, but he got this big injury down his thigh, and he said that, you know, one of his big hobbies was photography, and he was just in town, and he just thought, you know, he was there for the weekend. But Craig Johnston, yeah, he was a huge star for Liverpool, and for those that don't know and who take any notice, I mean, Craig Johnston invented the Adidas Predator football boot, which made him a very wealthy guy in the end. But yeah, Craig was around, and then I mean, people like Greg Norman, another Aussie, he was always hanging around with Nigel Mansell, and they would always go and play golf together. I think the year before or something, they'd gone out. Greg Norman had taken Mansell out on his boat, and Mansell had caught this bloody huge shark. I think there's some pictures around of it somewhere, but yeah, that was, so Greg Norman was around, and then again coming onto the music side of it, and I saw these guys sort of 2 or 3 times during times we went to Adelaide, and that was AC/DC. And the guys came into our garage. I'll show you 1 or 2 pictures. But there was Brian Johnson, Chris Slade, who was the drummer, Cliff Williams, the bass player, and Malcolm Young. I think the only guy that wasn't there was Angus. He wasn't there in his school uniform, but we sat Brian Johnson in the car, because Brian, he's a huge motor racing fan, and I mean, in these days he's gone deaf. You know, can't really perform with AC/DC anymore, but that's, a lot of it is down to a lot of the racing cars that he's had and he's owned and raced himself. But yeah, we sat him in the Leighton House car, and yeah, he was a good guy. He was a good guy. But so we did you know, did what we were there for, which was qualifying for the race, and you know, it wasn't anything spectacular. It always seemed that you know, nobody's minds were really on the job at Adelaide. We had to do, you know, we were there to race, and that was fine. I think we qualified. Ivan qualified 9th, Mauricio 13th. Was it 13th or 19th or so? I've got it in front there. 19th. But it was one of those. We all, you know, we got there Sunday morning, and there was often a bit of a tradition. Being the last race of the season, there was always a bit of fancy dress going on amongst the teams. I remember the Lotus guys in '86, because Johnny Dumfries had been racing alongside Senna, and it was his last Grand Prix, and all the guys on his car, they all turned up in kilts, and you know, with the race shirts and kilts, and that was a bit of fun. But this particular time, I think one or two of us, we started sort of painting our faces and everything like this, but I don't know where the hell I got it from, but I found this this clown's head, which you can sort of see in this picture here, and I put this clown's head on, and for some reason I had one hell of a load of photographers around me again, and I think the pictures of myself and Capelli ended up in some national newspapers and that, and I know in one or two of the magazines, you know, the F1 magazines. So, but it's a picture I've used a few times, and I think it's always a lot of fun, to be honest with you. So anyway, we did the race, and we actually scored our last point of the season, and Capelli, he got 6th place. I think he was a lap down on whoever won it. Alan Prost, Senna 2nd. But after the race, we then got into what had become a huge and very lucrative tradition at the Adelaide Grand Prix, because they would let the organisers, as soon as the flag dropped, the whole of the crowd of all round the circuit made their way down to the pit lane, and what you would find is that, you know, there would just be thousands upon thousands, you know, just descending onto the track. You've probably all seen places like Monza and places like this where there's just like tens of thousands of people come on to the podium and that. But all these people would turn up at the pit lane, hoping to see a few drivers and everything like that. But the main thing we were interested in was it was market day. And we basically would sell all of our team gear, all of our bits of broken bodywork, all of the things that we'd collected up through the year, because we knew at the end of the season we'd be able to sell them over the pit wall in Adelaide. And as much merchandise as there was or for sale around the circuits, you'd have the caps and the shirts from all the different teams, but everybody wanted a piece of you know, race worn clothing, and we were there to serve them. And we were lucky in a way with Leighton House, because we got such almost it's an iconic colour that we had, and it was something that just everybody wanted, and we'd sort of brought over lots and lots of t-shirts and everything that we'd had in Japan and that, and we'd crammed them all into our suitcases and everything. But what everybody wanted really was our race gear, our team shirts. So we sold them. I mean, we got the green shirts, we got the shorts, we got the trousers, we got everything like that. I mean, strangely enough, this hat that I'm wearing now, I swapped this hat to an Australian policeman. This was his government issued hat. I did have a badge to go with it as well, but he wanted to swap. He just wanted a race shirt, and I thought, well, I want one of those hats. So we did a deal on it, and I've still got it to this day. Obviously, sort of like 32 years later. But we made money like you wouldn't believe. You know, in an hour of selling stuff over the pit wall, I mean, you know, I think I made about $3,000 or something stupid like that. It was, you know, and what it did was it paid for our holidays at the end of the season, because we'd all sort of, you know, we'd finish the race and then people would disappear. You know, they'd get the families out to meet them or wherever, and they'd fly off wherever they were going all around the world, and that over the wall sale, it paid for everything. So that was terrific. And there were one or two of the teams looked at us sort of enviously, really, because I don't think it was a thing that Bernie Eccleston particularly enjoyed. I think he thought it looked too much like low rent, us selling all our stuff over the pit wall. And certainly teams like McLaren and Ron Dennis, they just you were just forbidden to sell your race team gear. And I mean, all the McLaren shirts, you know, back then they were the red and white Marlborough shirts. They'd all got their names embroidered onto the shirt. So if Ron saw anybody wearing one of those shirts, then they were in loads of trouble. It was funny. One of the races I'll talk about in future, but I'm going to mention it now. But somebody had sold a race suit, one of the driver's race suits. He'd sold it to somebody, some driver in one of the support races. Now, it was all very well selling the gear after the race, but selling it before could bite you on the backside a little bit. But this driver's race suit appeared on this driver on one of the support races, and it was in front of us on the grid. And I'll try and remember a bit later on, and I'm pretty sure it was Martin Brundle's suit. It was one of his spare race suits, but somebody had sold it, and it wasn't me, but somebody had sold it to one of the drivers in a support race, and he turned up, and it was, you know, he was ready to go, and he got this Brabham suit on, which was fabulous. But yeah, so after the race, we packed up, went off to our various parties, and I honestly cannot remember where. I mean, I went to the John Farnham concert after the race, but after that, you know, it just sort of melted off. We all melted off into the night. Probably got up very late on the Monday, and a few of us disappeared for a few days sightseeing before flying back to England.